Hello, and welcome to the
Hi.
long-awaited return of David's Divergent Discussions. I'm your host, David Gray Hammond, and let me start by apologising for the long gap right as we started a new season. I had to have emergency surgery, and then I was recovering, so I have not been doing these. But we're back. We've got lots booked in, and today we're going to talk about the "It's Not Okay to Not Be Okay" campaign. With me, I have Charlie, Owen, and Emma, and we'll do some brief audio descriptions, and we'll go from there. So, I'm David. I'm a mid-30s white Mediterranean man wearing thick-rimmed glasses. I have a beard, a lip piercing, and an ear tunnel. I have a shaved head, and I'm sat in my very blue room, and I no longer have rickety bookcases near me. So now they fall on anyone that comes through my door, which is just fine with me. Charlie, would you like to do an audio description?
Hi, I'm Charlie Hart. My pronouns are she, they, or they, them. I am a 40-something blonde woman wearing an infinity necklace. And we're all mad here, Alice in Wonderland t-shirt, sitting in front of a countryside mural with a rainbow. And thank you for having me again.
It's always a pleasure to have you, Charlie. Owen and Emma, would you like to give a brief description of yourselves?
Really? Hi, I'm Emma. I am mixed race. I have got red hair and I'm wearing a black t-shirt and I'm sitting next to my fiance Owen.
Hi, I'm Owen. I'm 50 odd, bald-headed man with a white goatee beard, wearing a black shirt.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Oh, and pronouns are she, her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
For me.
Right, we're here today to talk about the "It's Not Okay to Not Be Okay" campaign, and as you can see on the screen, you can share stuff for this with that hashtag, and in fact, would really appreciate it if you did, because the more people that share, the more people that are going to see this campaign. But Emma, do you want to talk a bit about why this campaign is happening?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I'd have to link in another campaign for that. My son was turned down for help from child and adolescent mental health services because he's autistic. So I did a petition and we went up to 10 Downing Street and we put the petition in. It's over 208,000. And I was sitting next to Owen on the sofa just thinking about mental health campaigns. And I said to him, why is it okay not to be okay? And he said, it isn't. And I said, well, maybe we should say that, do something about that. So it's tied in with the CAMS for me anyway, it is. But we know obviously from all of our experiences that mental health care for neurodivergent people can be appalling. And it's not okay for people to feel suicidal, and it's not okay for people to be mistreated by mental health professionals. It's not okay. So that's where it came from.
I agree. And for anyone who wants to check out the CAM stuff, you can visit the website on Scream'em, emergentdivergence.com/CAMS crisis. So, yeah, I mean, it's not okay to not be okay. I never really understood the original sort of hashtag that said it was, because I mean, I get what it was doing. It was trying to normalize talking about mental health, and that is vitally important. We need less stigma around mental health problems. We need to acknowledge that a lot of people experience them at some point in their life. But that doesn't mean it's okay to experience mental health problems in your life. It comes with a great deal of trauma and pain, and the experiences that come with having a mental health problem are absolutely not okay. So from my own perspective, I'm schizophrenic, and yeah, I do view it as another form of neurodivergence, but that doesn't mean that I necessarily think it's a great thing. For me, experiencing breaks from reality are terrifying, and I find that you know, particularly complex mental health needs, you know, when we're talking about things like personality disorders, psychotic conditions, you know, they tend to be left out of these conversations when people use the "it's okay not to be okay" thing. So, for
Yeah,
me personally, I'm
that's
hoping
true.
to see more discussion of things like schizophrenia, bipolar, borderline. You know, I think these things need to be talked about more, and I'm hoping this campaign will get people talking about why they have these experiences and what those experiences are. And I was just wondering if Charlie, what would you like to see from this campaign?
There's so many layers to this, because I'm, on the one hand, I'm here as a mother of autistic adolescents, one of whom sadly ended his own life, and two that are really struggling with social anxiety, and my stepchild has OCD and various mental health issues. So it's very close to me, but also I think that it doesn't go far enough, because it's like that Mandela quote: we need to not keep pulling people out of the river, but go upstream and find out why they're falling in. People are not getting identified soon enough with the underlying causes of the things that they're struggling with, and this impacts mental health. So we need to make it easier and more frequent to screen for particularly neurodivergent conditions, neurological differences. So I wouldn't have spent 15 years thinking that I was suffering with recurring depression and anxiety if I'd known that I was just autistic and that I needed to change the way that I worked. So there's that, but also, yes, there's too much emphasis on anxiety and depression and having a natter and putting the kettle on and telling people who are struggling to reach out to others. And there's not enough on really understanding, really hearing the lived experience of not just the common mental health conditions, but the ugly ones no one wants to know about as well. Yeah, nobody's saying, "Oh, you're having delusions, so I'll put the kettle on. You can come round and tell me all about it," are they? So there's like a large part of society that just doesn't seem to care, and they would happily lock people away that have got the more impactful mental health conditions and just have a natter to someone that's a bit anxious about their workload. Now, I'm really rambling because I would have liked to have prepared for this, and I haven't had time because I'm back at work today after quite a lazy Christmas. But there are so many themes here that I want to tease out and look into. At the end of this month, we have the 1st of February, I think it is, Time to Talk Day, when every year I've seen all the popular in-crowd bitches and arseholes, let's face it, post all over their Facebook. The door's always open, my kettle's always on. I'd rather talk to you at midnight than go to your funeral and all that. And it's not enough. We need society to be more accepting, accommodating, and compassionate, so that people don't end up in these messes. That's
Absolutely.
a bit of a rant, but yeah.
It's a good one though. It's a good. You made some very valid points. And Emma and Owen, I was just wondering if you'd like to weigh in with what you'd like to see come from this campaign.
Go on.
I think what I want, sorry, what I'd like to see in this campaign is actually more awareness of the failings of the mental health system. I mean, so many times, I mean, I've been diagnosed with anxiety and depression from sort of early 30s. And so many times, you know, you can go and get help. And you just get, so you get the GP referral to the mental health system, and then they just throw it back, and it's just almost like a revolving door.
What help? Yeah.
Yeah,
help.
exactly.
And
there's this whole sort of myth in mainstream society. Oh, if you've got problems, all you need to do is go to the mental health people, and they'll give you a few pills. or sit down and put, as you say, put the kettle on, and it'll all be resolved. 6 months, you'll be bright as rain, and you'll all be back to your happy, normal self. It's absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I also want people to be aware that the mental health system just isn't working.
It's not. I could
I
share
agree.
some of my experience with the mental health system, but it seems to just be constantly people trying to fob me off. I get that many letters saying, can you send an email to this email address that's this long to confirm you still want to be on your waiting list? If we don't hear from you by the end of this week, we're going to assume you're fine and discharge you. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I'm autistic and ADHD. And it's just a way of massaging the figures, the waiting list figures. And then when you get the support, quite often it's talking therapies, which are not always suitable for autistic people, especially autistic young people. They wanted to give talking therapies over the phone to my socially anxious and phone phobic autistic teenage daughter, which she said, frankly, she'd rather kill herself than talk to a stranger on the phone about her mental health.
Yeah.
There's nothing suitable unless you're minted and you can afford to go private.
Yeah.
And
can I just come in here?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't like the term talking therapies, because what I want is, and what I've always wanted from the mental health system, is someone to actually listen and understand. So I mean, what I would prefer is like listening therapy, where someone actually listened and understood, rather than me just, I could talk, for ages and ages and ages. But if somebody doesn't understand or doesn't want to understand, it's actually worse. It's a form of invalidation.
And I think, it's particularly noticeable. You access a mental health service, and it most of the time when you have a mental health problem, it comes from a very real source.
Yeah.
And I can think of people who, they're struggling financially, they're experiencing domestic violence, they've got childhood trauma, and the approach is, well, we need to change the way you think about it. Well, no, listen to me and validate the fact that the things I'm experiencing are real problems that are not okay. It's not enough to just make me think differently about them, because that pain is still going to be there. I need someone to listen and validate and tell me that it's not okay that I went through that. I need to feel heard. But so often it's, well, just change the way you think about it. The way you're thinking about your problems is unhealthy. And there's a great deal of neuronormativity, I think, in mental health treatment. And, I'll highlight Bobby's comment here. Talking therapy, unless it's neurodivergent led and informed, in my own humble opinion, doesn't work for neurodivergent people. And I think, you know what? I've seen this a lot, both professionally and personally. These talking therapies, they're done as like a one size fits all. They're supposed to be, according to nice guidelines, adapted for different people. But so often you're given like worksheets and books that everyone has to work from, most of which, if I haven't found one yet, that takes account of my needs as an autistic person.
Yes. Yeah.
And Emma, I was just wondering if you could, if there's anything you're hoping to see from this campaign.
I come from a family that has psychosis and schizophrenia in it. My grandma and my uncle were both schizophrenic, and 2 of my children, now adults, have had psychotic breaks. And the way that both of them were treated and invalidated and, just put down, not supported, it's not something I want to see continue for other children, teens, and adults. It's not something that should be happening to anybody.
I agree.
So,
And I know from my own experiences with when I've had psychotic episodes, the services that are supposed to support us can actually be quite hostile towards.
oh, definitely. I mean, my son is 6 foot something, and he was experiencing psychosis. We were in A&E, and he'd put his head through a window and he'd flipped a trolley, and I was told that I should take him home even though he said that he wanted to harm himself, that I should take him home and call the police if it continues.
Yeah.
Call the police on a 6-foot black male who's having. Can you imagine what would have happened?
I can very well imagine what would have
Yeah.
happened. And
So I
that's-
took him home, and we had to deal with it between me and him. We had to overcome it with no help, none, no medication, nothing, because they just couldn't be bothered.
yeah.
They honestly just couldn't be bothered. And I also have anxiety disorder and dysthymia in my family. Dysthymia is long-term depression that never ends. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that need to be in
You mean you
place to
can't
help
just
people.
start with a cup of tea and a nutter? Seriously?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that would help, but it depends if there's biscuits on offer.
Yeah,
But
I'm
yeah,
always up
that's
for
what I
it.
want to see out of it, is for more help to be given. And I know that that's probably not going to happen. You know, professionals don't care. We know that a lot of them don't care. There are good people out there, but not many. But if we can just keep raising awareness about what is happening to neurodivergent children, teens, and adults, how we're treated, how we're brushed onto the carpet, then maybe one day something will change. It's worth trying, isn't it?
I always think of it as incremental steps. We might not see the overall change tomorrow, but what we start today will have an impact that will grow exponentially as we move forward into the future. So this is why I'm saying to people, you know, please share with the hashtag. It's not okay to not be okay. Share your experiences, share what you want to see, share the change that needs to happen, and use the hashtag, because it brings it all together, and it means that more and more people will be a part of this. And the more voices there are, the harder it is to ignore us.
I'm hoping it will go viral, like hashtag show us your meds.
Yes, I remember that campaign. I was
Yeah.
very proud to be part of that campaign.
Thank you.
I
That
am,
was,
I,
again, just trying to remove the stigma
yeah,
of people taking medication.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I thought, how can we do that? And the only way I could think of was, well, how about if we have people showing their medication, show us your meds?
and for me, that was a really important moment, because up to that point, you know, I was a schizophrenic male I'm going to be honest, I am on a shit ton of medication. Like, you know, schizophrenia is not easy to manage.
Yeah.
And I'd never really been public about just how much medication I have to take. And Show Us Your Meds gave me the opportunity to show people my reality, but in a way where I felt empowered. And I think that's something I would really like to see from this campaign, is people sharing the things they struggle with, the failures they've experienced through services, but feeling empowered when they do it, feeling like they're contributing to something bigger. Because I think that's one of the biggest things that these services do to us, is they make us feel isolated and powerless. And I think that actually compounds the mental health problems as it is, because if you go into a mental health service, if you're lucky enough to get seen, you're at the mercy of whatever professional they put you in front of. You know, they make the decisions, they decide how it's going to go. And if you don't want to do what they want you to do, you're not engaging with them. You know, it's so frustrating.
I have a young friend who actually did manage to get in front of CAMS, so that shows how serious she was. And they discharged her back to the care of her GP because of one WebEx meeting that she couldn't face attending.
Yeah. And I see this a lot in my professional life. You know, you miss an appointment, you're discharged. You know, and that's wrong, because it's never as simple as not engaging. You know, I rather than saying this person's not engaging, the question I want them to ask is, why is our service not accessible to this person?
Absolutely.
And why was this person not engaged?
Yeah.
Why weren't they, you know, feeling like they could share? Totally off subject, but we went to see a mum and their child today, me and Owen, and the invalidation in schools as well over mental health is appalling. This child had been wetting themselves in fear, vomiting, crying, a total phobia of school, and they're neurodivergent, and the teacher's reply was, "Oh, that's just nerves. It's just nerves. They'll be okay." You know, so yeah, it's a lot of work right across the board that we've got to do for all age groups.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Bobby has shared a comment saying that so I've never shared this. After my youngest was born and Ella's Danlos kicked my ass and I was overwhelmed and couldn't walk, in burnout and self-harming. I didn't know I was ADHD at the time. I was told ways to self-harm safely and sent to talking therapy. I lasted a session only. This is something that really annoys me, is services that do this sort of harm reduction approach to self-harm. I know we have to have harm reduction, but it shouldn't be something that is thrown at everyone. I've worked with so many people and been told myself, well, you know, we're not going to do anything about your self-harm right now because we don't have the resources, but here's how you can do it safely. Like, it's not okay. Again, it's not okay to not be okay. There is no safe self-harm. Harm is harm. And it really annoys me when services use harm reduction as a replacement for services that should exist.
Well,
Because
CAMS are doing something with safe cutting, aren't they?
they are, and it
So-called
worries
safe
me.
cutting for children.
Yeah, it really, really worries me because
Yeah, it's horrifying.
It is.
you know,
Instead of looking at the triggers and working to remove the triggers and put support in place, they're like, oh, well, if you're going to cut, might as well do it anyway, but here's where to cut and here's how deep to cut.
yeah, and it's terrifying that we've got to a place where services are sort of effectively telling us to just get on with it. And I
Yeah.
know that this isn't necessarily the fault of individual professionals, although there is a lot of work to be done there as well. It is a symptom of a system that is completely unfit for purpose. You know, it doesn't have the resources, the staff aren't trained properly. You know, there are so many things that need to be improved. And I'll be honest, there are days where I think we need to rip it out at the foundations and start from scratch.
And we need more services for neurodivergent people that are run by neurodivergent people, or at least staffed by.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it really frustrates me as well that the current sort of provision for neurodivergent people who are struggling with these things is sort of charities, effectively. Because don't get me wrong, I love charities. I'm involved with a lot of them, but they should not be there to replace services that our country does not want to pay for.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, the fact that there are so many charities doing this work says to me it's wonderful they're doing this work, but they shouldn't have to, because these services should exist as statutory services.
AMEN's up doing a lot of work that we shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Like house visits to children who are terrified of school. But nice ending, a good ending. We helped the parent deregister them, and they won't be going back to school anymore. So they were a lot happier and more confident by the time we left.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But there
think,
should be some sort of outreach program where people are, you know, paid to be able to do what we're doing, what so many of you are doing as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just think education's a big one, actually, I think, when we're talking about mental health, because I think for a lot of us, mental health problems really start to kick off during those years of education, those younger years. You know, we're thrown into a system that is just completely inappropriate for us. We're treated like crap, and then people go, "But why are they anxious and depressed all the time?" Well, maybe it's because they're in a system that made them hate everything about themselves. And I think, you know, there's a lot to be said for not just fixing the mental health system, but pretty much all of the systems that exist, because they all seem to contribute to the amount of suffering in this country in particular. And yeah, it's not okay.
It's not okay, is it? It's not okay, actually.
No.
Yeah.
And so much of it comes from bullying as well. So even if school was inclusive and they could teach people with different learning styles and processing styles, if you've got kids that still enter the education system whose parents have taught them to take the piss out of people that are different from themselves, and to exploit vulnerabilities, then it's still going to be a nightmare for mental health.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and no matter how good a school is, they can't make children in their school like your child.
Yeah, it starts.
So there should just be a zero tolerance to
Yeah.
bullying, full stop,
Yeah.
shouldn't there?
Well, it should be, but so many teachers, especially in my day, were the actual bullies.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, for me as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But something I really wanted to talk about, whilst I've got you here, is because one of the really frustrating things I come across, both as an autistic person myself and as a professional working with autistic people, you send your autistic child or your autistic loved one, adult, to a mental health service, and they go, "Oh, well, anxiety is just part of being autistic." No, it's not. Like, show me in the diagnostic criteria where it says so anxious, can't leave the house. Like, I don't know. I'm sure that the three of you have probably had your own experiences with this, and I was wondering if you might be comfortable sharing them.
Can share what Cam said about Izzy when she was assessed. So this was during the lockdown. So they assessed her over WebEx. I know I've mentioned this before in the Cam's Crisis special, but she was explaining to Cam's that she could not cope, that she couldn't say whether it was sensory or social or what at school, but it was incredibly draining. She was panicking as she was talking to them, tears running down her face. And they didn't accept her for mental health support because she has an autism diagnosis.
I take it that was Cam's.
The rejection letter said, does not exhibit anxiety over and above what we would expect in an autistic adolescent. Well, I didn't feel like that when I was her age, and I'm autistic. And I don't think it's okay. And she was referred again then later on and rejected again on the basis that they asked me the question, if she was at home in control of her environment, only seeing people in a safe bubble, only eating what she wants to eat, doing what she wants to do, would she be anxious? And I said no. But you can't live life in a bubble. I'm
Very
really, my heart's going now, because this is just totally unacceptable. They are so letting down our precious neurodivergent kids, and I don't want to lose another.
Yeah. And
Yeah, exactly.
Bobby's weighed in the comments that Cam's refused their child 16 years ago because they are autistic, yet they were happy to see them prior to diagnosis. Yeah. It astounds me the way they're like, oh, they're autistic. Yeah, well, mental health problems are just a normal part of that. Well, you should expect to feel like crap. You're different. But Emma, I know because you referenced the CAMS campaign, which obviously people might know I've been writing a lot about the CAMS campaign. Might even be a book coming.
I know. I want to help write the forward for that. I'm going to get myself in there somewhere.
Oh, you're in there. You're in there.
Oh, good. Just because I want people to know how appalling it is that an autistic mother has had to take out a petition to shame CAMS publicly and take her autistic son to Downing Street to beg the government to give a fuck about whether her son lives or dies or not.
Well, you might find that there's a small dedication to you and AIM in the book.
Thank you.
But I know that this is what I was going to say. The CAMS thing. This started with your experience with your son, didn't it? That was the start of this growing movement. I'm going to call it, because we'll start.
They turned him down. Used his autism as the reason. The fact that he has a diagnosis of ASD, as they put it, and they suggested a MASH referral. Now, MASH is social services for at-risk children. There's nothing they could have done to help me. And when the social worker did phone me from MASH, and she said, I don't know why I'm phoning you, but I've been told I've got to by CAMS, and I've explained everything. I've told her about the petition and everything else, and she was appalled. She couldn't work out why she'd been asked to phone, you know, and she asked if she could contact CAMS on our behalf, and I said, you can, but they won't care. Never heard anything back from that. The GP
No.
did the same thing. She phoned. I said, well, you know, this is why they've told you to phone. And she said, oh, well, you know, I'll definitely back the campaign and I'll contact them. Never heard anything back. So, yeah, it's just, it's not okay. That's all I can say. It's not okay to not be okay.
No, and because I know that I when we were sort of, you know, pushing some of the posts out about this to begin with, there were a
Yeah.
few people who seemed to be confused about what the hashtag was about, and this is what I've tried to explain to them. It's about more than just saying it's not okay to have mental health problems. It's about saying that the systems in place are directly contributing to these problems, and
Yeah.
so. You know, okay, it is okay to talk about mental health, but we can't just keep talking about the fact that we don't feel great. We need to be opening up the conversation to the systems that are supposed to help us and they don't, to the things in our everyday lives that are contributing to these mental health problems, to the fact that we should be preventing these mental health problems in the first place
Yeah.
and not just throwing people to the wolves. And for that matter, going to our mental health service should not feel like being thrown to the wolves.
Yeah.
So, does anyone have any sort of more thoughts that they want to share? Because I've said everything that I want to say. Charlie, I know you might have some more to say.
I might. I need to formulate my thoughts, I think, because they're all scrambled in my head right now. There's so much change is needed.
Well, I do think we'll probably do a part 2 to this episode
Yeah.
and have a wider discussion. But Emma and Owen, do you have any sort of final thoughts?
Yeah, I just needed, I think, to share past my experience because I was only diagnosed autistic about 3 years ago. And prior to that, I'd literally had about 20 years of experience dealing with my local NHS. And yeah, I mean, even when they didn't know I was autistic, they were still, you know, it started, I mean, at the early days, it was take the pills and fuck off. And then when the pills didn't work, they made me worse. It was, oh, what's it, you know, you need to take them longer, you need to take, and they just never ever worked for me. And because I didn't like the pills, it was just like, well, that's your fault. You don't want to get better. Go away. And this was when, I mean, and this went on for years and years and years. It was just, there's nothing there for you. Go away. Try the charities. And even when I was brought up to, you know, countless psychiatrists and psychologists never ever even considered I was autistic. Even when they were asked, I couldn't be autistic because I'm capable of empathy. And it was only literally by forcing them through, I mean, started also, I had to go and get a referral from the GP to them. And it was my local health authority. You don't get to see a psychiatrist anymore straight away. You get a phone call from a mental health nurse, and they're just literally instructing you to go elsewhere. They don't want to listen. And so I literally had to go through a process of constant self-harming to even get to a psychiatrist to get the referral for an autistic, you know, ASD assessment. And this is how, and I'm not the only one that's had to do this or been through this. And that's what really
We all
hurt.
spend years or maybe decades jumping through flaming hoops before
Yeah.
anyone gets to the underlying causes of why we're struggling. And by
Yeah.
then, a lot of the damage is done. It took me 15 years from my first mental breakdown to getting an autism diagnosis. And I'm not exactly in one piece now, but I wouldn't have ended up with PTSD if I'd realised what my neurotype was sooner.
Yeah.
And so many people go through trying to get mental health support without knowing that they're neurodivergent. I mean, it's just as bad with ADHD, I think. And if anybody ever thought, well, hang on, there's a pattern emerging here, maybe we should take a more holistic view and get this person assessed for autism and ADHD, rather than telling them to take a month off work and take SSRIs, actually get to the underlying cause of the issue before we spend so long struggling to cope that we just feel like complete losers and totally broken.
Yeah, and I really want to highlight here the fact that in the UK we have this kind of crisis-driven intervention model where they basically won't see you until you're like at the worst crisis point you can, and then like you know they'll throw you in a psych ward, or you'll be rushed to see a psychiatrist maybe. That was my experience. It was only when I was at my very worst I finally got seen. The problem is different NHS trusts have different thresholds for what they count as a crisis. So one of the problems I had was it started for me when I was living up north in Yorkshire, and I was seen by a psychiatrist because they deemed my crisis to be bad enough. I moved down to Brighton on the south coast, and they were like, "No, you're not bad enough. We're not going to see you." And it was only when I had nearly died multiple times that they went, "Oh, maybe we should see him now." And I ended up in a psych ward twice because no one had bothered to help me properly. You have long waits to get things like care coordinators, because here in the UK, if you're under secondary mental health care, you might get a care coordinator, which is basically a liaison with the mental health service. You know, I see it. I'm lucky. I see a psychiatrist every 6 months because they've finally gone, "Do you know what? Maybe we should actually keep an eye on this because he's had multiple psychotic episodes." But for so many people, it's just jumping through hoop after hoop, having to meet this threshold, that threshold, go to this assessment, that assessment. And if you don't do everything perfectly the way they want you to do it, they just discharge you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wrong. It's wrong. So yeah, I think we're definitely going to do a part 2 to this, and maybe we'll get a couple more people on, and then we can have a bit of a roundtable discussion. But I think if no one else has got anything else to share, this is probably a natural stopping point. So for everyone watching, please get out there, share with the hashtag. It's not okay to not be okay. Share your experiences, share the change you want to see. Just do everything you can to amplify this cause, because it's only when each and every one of us takes part that these things get seen, and we need to make enough noise that we can't be ignored. Charlie, Emma, and Owen, thank you so much for coming on and joining me tonight. It's been fantastic having you here. It's been a difficult conversation, but
I warned you I was going to rant, didn't I?
yeah, well, we needed it. This is something that has to be talked about, and it's not an easy conversation, but it's a conversation that has to happen. So thank you,
Can
everyone.
I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
If you're not comfortable sharing your mental health experiences, even if you're just retweeting what we put out and what others put out, or resharing, or just liking and putting the hashtag underneath it, or sharing it with the hashtag, that's a big help as well.
Yeah. Every little bit helps. Anything that amplifies the cause. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone who's tuned in. Thank you to Charlie, Emma, and Owen. Thank you, Bobby. I've seen you in the comments. You've been doing a lot of commenting, and that's been really helpful. So I think next week David's Divergent Discussions is back on with I can't remember what, but there is another episode. And in the meantime, we'll catch you all again soon. So thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.